Peoples of the world, welcome back. It's Capital G bringing you a deck tech for Barrin, Tolarian, Archmage. Gonna be changing up my style here. New year means a slightly different format. I know things visually look the same. But what we'll be doing, starting with this video, is that when I talk about the deck, I'm not going to go in-depth card on card on card. I'm going to highlight the first, 4 to 10 cards depending on the deck. Go in depth on those and really highlight the strategy and the game plan of the deck. After that, I may stop on specific cards as we go through the list, but I won't be just reading off the cards, just showing the visual. It'll give you a chance to kind of talk also about, anything from what's happening in the game to just life in general. So a little more free-flowy, a little more loose, a little more off the cuff, and a lot less droning on as to what cards are showing on the screen, because you can see them, you can read them, you can pause them. And also, starting with this video, I'm going to make it a point to regularly post the deck links. A lot of people constantly ask me for a deck link, a link to a deck, whenever I do these videos. One of the reasons I hadn't really been posting them is because I wanted people to, watch the videos in full and see the whole deck that way. Otherwise, what's the point in putting out a 20-minute video? By changing up this format a little bit, the idea is that if you just want the deck tech, you've got it. But if you want to hear this old Magic veteran ramble on for a little bit and maybe gain some other cool insight, stick around. So hopefully people do stick around more often than not. And we're going to have a lot more fun here, I would think. So with that being said, let us talk about a mono blue commander, because we all know how fun mono blue commanders are. So Barrin, Tolarian Archmage. Double blue 1 for this 2/2 human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, return up to one other target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand. And at the beginning of your end step, if a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield this turn, draw a card. Interesting. So I remember back in the day, one of the most annoying things blue did was send creatures back to your hand. You tap 4 or 5 mana, drop your big bomb creature only just to get mana ward. It's essentially like 3 mana time walk, basically. And on top of that, your opponent's got an extra creature on the board that they can do whatever they want with. So, mono blue tempo is the game plan. Barrin also rewards you for returning creatures back to your hand by letting you draw cards. So we're going to have things like Crystal Shard that can... At first glance, it looks like you want to, activate this and return your opponent's creatures to their hand using this thing, which you could totally do if they tap out. But if your opponents don't tap out, then they just have to pay the 1 mana and they get to keep their creature, and it doesn't really gain anything. 1 blue, send something back to your hand at instant speed is absolutely fantastic, and especially since Barrin rewards us with extra cards, this is something we want to be doing. What are we going to do with those extra cards? Well, there's 2 things we can do. Let's look at the deck's only planeswalker, Mordenkainen. Coming in from the Forgotten Realms, this 6 mana planeswalker has a really cool -2. Look at that -2. Create a blue dog illusion creature token with this creature's power and toughness are equal to twice the number of cards in your hand. Pretty sweet. So this deck is going to run a bunch of creatures that benefit from the number of cards in our hand. There may be a few other artifacts in there as well. We'll see as we go through the list. The other abilities, they're cool, it's nice to have them, but we're here for the -2. The other thing this deck wants to do is perhaps eke out the alternate win with Triskaidekaphile. Mwahaha. This 2 mana 1/3 says you have no maximum hand size. Perfect. We don't want a maximum hand size. We want to keep the cards in our hand. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. So, a deck that wants to send cards back to their owner's hand, well, Triskaidekaphile is exactly what we want to have. Because we could just end up with that 13th card in our hand. This guy on the battlefield, guy, girl, not entirely sure, scary AF regardless, and win the game. That's the game plan. Either smack in with creatures that are buffed because of the number of cards in our hand, or we win the game because of the number of cards in our hand. That's the game plan that we are going with here. that in mind, I'm going to kind of scroll through the artifacts that we have here. And on the topic of artifacts, we're going to get a lot of cool ones out of Phyrexia All Will Be One. Spoiler season, it's not done yet, but most of the cards have been revealed through various leaks. Even Mythic Spoiler has a lot of the Italian leaks that have recently come out, posted on their site. You can tell just kind of by the power level and the balancing that those cards are definitely real, and there's definitely some good ones. Imperial Plate's an old favorite of mine, by the way. I run this in Akiri because Akiri draws me cards and cares about equipment, so that was a good fit there. It's a good fit here too, right on the theme. We've got 10 cards in hand, giving one of our creatures +10/+10 and swinging in. Well, your opponents will notice that. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts so far. A lot of the mechanics, the new Toxic, a new way to hand out poison counters, is pretty cool and very, very dangerous, I might add. Especially since they're putting Proliferate back in the set as well. So by having both of those, it's kind of scary. Also scary, Helm of the Host, by the way, going back to the list. We want to throw this on our commander and get all that extra card draw. Why not? Because, yeah, again, we throw this on our commander, comes in, bounces something, and then we get the extra card draw if we bring something that is ours back to our hand. So, great way to take advantage of the ETBs in this deck. I did pull one from a set booster box, so I finally have one. It took a very, very long time. But yes, the corrupted mechanics coming in from Phyrexia All Will Be One. I think it's a really cool mechanic. Take advantage of our opponents having 3 poison counters. Do an extra thing. I definitely like that. The new commanders are pretty cool also. Saw the new commander decks. We're getting a new Atraxa. Very, very brave of Wizards to have another 4-color creature in the main set. Last time that happened, they broke the format. So they had to be very, very careful. That new Atraxa shows off a theoretically new card type called Battle. So I don't know if Battle is going to be like a completely new card at all, or if it's going to be like, say, Battle Instant, Battle Sorcery kind of deal. Probably Battle Instant. That seems pretty likely also. What would be cool is if they had found a way to put Plane Chase basically into a standard set. That is another line of thinking that I've got for battle cards. Body of Knowledge, great ad here. When I was doing some digging, it's like, hey, this thing cares about the number of cards in our hand. Whenever it's dealt damage, we draw that many cards. So if it's already a 10/10 and they have to chump it with like a 3/3 or whatever, we're getting even more cards, so this is getting even bigger. So yes. Also, Descendant of Saramao, this is another card I wanted to highlight here today. Like, we get to 7, 8, 9, 10 cards in our hand, and this guy's out. We pay 2. We get to look at that many cards. Yes, they all go back on top. We can't scry them away, what have you. But whatever's in our next 10 cards, for example, we get the best one of them. That is absolutely fantastic in a deck of this style. As far as Phyrexia All Will Be One, there are 3 cards that I've seen, 2 of which were from the leaks, so I will not show those here today. One card that has been officially spoiled, which I will show at the end, that would fit in this deck as well. It's not included in the list at this point, but it's a very easy include if you ask me. But yeah, getting back to the battle card type, it's either going to be like Battle Instant or it's going to be like Battle Equipment, I would think. Just like another super type added to the, well, not super type, but super type is like legendary, that doesn't count. But it would be another sort of type added, kind of the same way we had tribal instants, tribal sorceries, tribal creatures kind of deal in the past. So that's what it could be. I like the idea of a core set or main set Plane Chase, because storyline wise it makes perfect sense. The Phyrexians are invading multiple planes or at least trying to. I'm not going to spoil the lore for those that haven't read up on it yet. But the idea is if they're going to be attacking multiple planes, so there's multiple places to do battle. A plane chase like battle card makes perfect sense to me. Maybe functioning in a way similar to world enchantments. So that's kind of my logic with that. Running my mage suite here: tribute mage, trinket mage, and trophy mage, because we've got a lot of cool artifacts in these 0 to 3 mana value range that we want to get fetch up. And also Vidalcan Aether Mage, this is specifically to go get Triskaidekaphile. I mean, you don't have to get Triskaidekaphile with it, but it makes it a lot easier to dig it up. So yes, that's kind of what my thoughts are on battle. I'm excited to see what it actually is. If it is battle instant, battle sorcery, battle equipment, that'd be kind of disappointing, honestly. I hope it is in fact a completely new card type, and I do hope that it's similar in vein to Plane Shift or Plane Chase, because that just feels right to me. One of my favorite spells from last year. I wasn't a huge New Capenna fan, honestly. I was able to dab around a little bit with it. It's not as if it's not cool cards or nothing cool you can do with it. I was more excited about the concept than I was about what we actually got, shall we say. But I mean, I also see lots of people playing a lot of the New Capenna commanders, and they're having a blast with it, so just comes down to a matter of taste, I guess. But this is one of my favorite cards from New Capenna. Last night I got to play at my LGS for the first time in like 2 years. Why wasn't I playing? Well, even once like everything went sideways, of course. Then my daughter came into the world, and then when I got back to work, I ended up working a lot of night shifts. So if the commander night at my LGS is every Wednesday night, my wife works weekends, so I have to stay home with the little one. I can't bring her to the LGS for an event like that. Guess what? Doesn't work. So finally, last night, for the first time in almost 2 years, I made it out and played some Commander over the table at my LGS. And so I've got a story with this card. We had someone at my table playing Kenrith the Returned King, and he was playing a weird mix of stacks and group hug. Very interesting. A very giving king, but then what the king giveth, he taketh away, or he taxes. It's like, you've got all this extra stuff, now pay your taxes, kind of deal. Great theme. So I remember at one point there was one thing that the Kenrith player didn't want to do. I'm like, well, your majesty, may I offer you this instead? I don't think you can refuse this. It's a fun little roleplay moment in the game. So yeah. Although, let me tell you, it felt good to actually push cardboard over the table for a change, and not just on Spell Table. I love Spell Table. I've been able to make some great friends over on that platform online. Join some cool Discords, meet lots of cool people. At least meet them in the digital front. I haven't had a chance to go see them at events, what have you. This is a great ad here. It's like curfews. Like someone wants to drop some early threats, just pay 1 blue, and those early threats go right back to their owner's hand. Could also draw us a card if our commander's out. We'll see. Great card. And yes, High Tide. We're playing mono blue, so why not? Get that extra mana going. But yes, playing at an LGS. The difference between playing at an LGS and playing through a Spell Table. I find that the LGS, when you're like in the store, those are where some of the more hardcore players are. Some of the people that are more, you know, into the game, like really into it, like really all in. They play a bit of a higher power level than I find in Spell Table, generally speaking. And you just kind of get it. It's just a different vibe. I didn't realize how much I missed it. To be honest with you, I've been enjoying Spell Table, but I didn't realize how much I've missed my LGS. So, it's also interesting to get like other people's insights, like in person, like talking about how, even though Atraxa is once again the #1 commander on EDH rec, The reality is you don't just run into Atraxa in the wild anymore. Most players still have their Atraxa decks, but in terms of gameplay have moved on from it. Tell me if that's your experience. I have to agree with the statement. I've only seen maybe 2 or 3 Atraxa decks over the past 2 years, even though it's the #1 commander in the according to EDH track. That just leaves the lands here in the deck, by the way. But yeah, no, just completely different vibe, completely different power level. I got to play my Gut deck. I'll send a link to my Gut deck here in the description. That's my Gut Choose a Background deck, and people were excited to actually see, like, physically in front of them what that looked like, because most people don't know what form that takes. Speaking of things that look way better on the over the table than on camera, the Brothers War Precon decks. For example, this island comes from, I think, the Mishra deck. And I have the Urza one. And I will never take apart the Urza Precon. It is just absolutely gorgeous in your hands. I know not everyone's a fan of the old border per se. Wizards themselves, they're not a huge fan, but they know there are people who are totally into the nostalgia of it. But for anyone who's picked up these Brothers War decks, or even the Warhammer decks, those things look so sharp. And I feel very, very bad about the idea of swapping out any of the cards and just throwing the look off. Because, I mean, they look better than even, like, the actual old border cards. Like, if I were to put in an actual old border card into the deck, it feels out of place. So, I'm just never going to modify the deck. And on Spell Table, it's a great environment for playing with precons. There's lots of times you log into your Spell Table, people are like, precon only game. I'm like, sure. I'll go in and give Urza a shot. Urza's the only one that I've got right now as an intact precon. Might scoop up Mishra, and I'll see what comes down the pipe later on. Just because the precon environment, playing precons from the different sets even, not just the same set, but from different sets against each other, and they actually balance out very well. So you know you're getting into a fair game. Except if you've got one of the 2 or 3 decks that have a built-in infinite combo. But even then, the gameplay just feels fantastic when you go precon against precon. So yeah, those are some of my observations from both Spell Table and the LGS. Like I said, it was so good to, actually pull up my Gut deck and people could see, oh, each of these 50 card stacks makes a different deck. Oh, yes, they do. Oh, yes, they do. So, and of course, what I find at the LGS, because they play at a higher power level, I pull out Gut. They're like, who's Gut? What's a Gut? And then all of a sudden, I'm smacking them upside the head with my skeletons, and they end up ganging on me and getting me out of the game. Because they realize that, oh, wait, this threat is actually legit. I find people on Spell Table, when I'm playing my Gut deck on Spell Table, people are a little slower to react to me. Whereas you go to the LGS, and they're a lot quicker to recognize the threat. So I don't know if that's your experience between Spell Table and LGS, but that was mine. And this was the Barrin Tolarian Archmage deck. Again, I'll have the full link for you in the description below. 3 cards that I would add in from Phyrexia All Will Be One. 2 of them. One is a I think it's called the Prison Sphere. The card is in Italian. I didn't look up the translation in advance, but it's pretty easy to see what the card does. Because it comes into play tapped, it taps for a blue mana, and you can pay 2 mana into it and sack it to draw a card. So I think those are going to be some pretty cool lands for monocolor builds, maybe 2-color builds. Don't go 3 or more of those things. But those are going to be some great lands added to our format. The second card that I wanted to highlight, they have a new cycle of spell bombs that were spoiled. The blue one is, 1 to cast, 1 to sack to draw a card. And it's blue and 2 to activate to return a permanent to its owner's hand. You could only do it at sorcery speed, but it's perfectly on theme. The third card was officially spoiled, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on screen for us. And that is Zenith Chronicler. We're playing a monocolor deck, so 2 mana for this 3/1 Phyrexian Construct. And whenever a player casts their first multicolored spell each turn, each other player draws a card. So, I mean, yes, every time one of our opponents casts a multicolored spell, 2 of our other opponents get to draw a card. By that same token, if we're constantly bouncing multicolored permanents back to our opponent's hands and they keep recasting them, they keep feeding us more and more cards. So, it's an interesting little card. Some people might find that a little too group huggy for their tastes. I am personally a fan of it, and I'm excited to see this in action. On that, Puppy's still asleep, which is the good news, but it won't be long before she wakes up and needs a WALK, so I am going to get out of here. I hope you all enjoy the new format. Let me know. Give me some feedback on this one, actually. Definitely want to know if you like the new style, the new presentation. Let me know what cards you'd add or remove from this list. What are some of your favorite cards coming out of All Will Be One? And what do you think about Battle? I mean, yes, it's still early. We haven't seen a Battle card yet, but what do you all think of that notion? Let me know in the comments. Let's have that conversation, and we will see you all again next time. Bye for now.